Clash of the Classics.
Hey everyone, welcome to Clash of the Classics. I'm Donnie, I'll be your moderator today. I've got my partner Chris with me. We're going to be talking about the 1955 Chevy Task Force and the 1955 F150 pickup. And we welcome you to join us and let us know which car you prefer. These battles are fueled by the Automatic Transmission Rebuilders Association. The ATRA is the largest automatic transmission network in the world. You can find them anytime at atra.com. I want to start with the Chevy. This is one of the coolest trucks I think we've ever showcased on our Clash of the Classics segment, Chris. We've been doing this show now for, I would say, roughly 4 or 5 years. And of all the cars that we get a chance to look at, I think this is definitely one of my favorites. 1955 3100 series pickups, a popular model in the classics world, but here they also call it a task force. So for you viewers out there who might recognize or you might relate to this car or this truck as being a task force, others might recognize it as being a 3100. They are synonymous, just one is, some people call it one, others call it something else, but they're definitely rugged, I think definitely dependable. Engine options back then had 3 engine options: the 235 inline 6-cylinder, the 265 V8, and then the all-new 283 cubic inch small block V8. In fact, even the 265 was new. 1955 was a banner year for a GM small block engine. It literally reshaped the whole automotive world in terms of V8 power. You know, you and I a couple years ago, Chris, had a chance to experiment with a small block 350 in a Camaro that we teamed up on a build with. And that's the same exact, that was a Gen O engine. That is the exact same engine that went from 55 all the way through 2009. And then 2010, GM dropped it in their automotive line in favor of the aluminum LS series, the LS1, the LS3 that we see in all the trucks and cars today. But you talk about a run from 55 to 09, that's getting every dollar out of your engineering dollar, wouldn't you think?
That's an incredible legacy for an engine.
Absolutely. I mean, they really did a good job. In fact, you can even still buy a brand new small block mouse motor for a classic build. You get it at GM Performance Parts, which is where we bought the engine when we built that second generation Camaro a few years ago. But 55 was the first year for this particular second gen. It ran from 55 through 59. The first generation ran from 47 through 1954. Surprisingly enough, we see more first gens, though, the 1947 through 54, than we do the second generations here, at least in the Southern California area. The first gens, by the way, they were called the advanced design, and the second gen were commonly referred to, as we said at the top of the set, as task force models. 1955, first year for 12-volt electrical. That was a huge deal back then. The AM radio was a big addition or a big option that a lot of people chose. In fact, interestingly enough, and you may or may not know this, in the early 30s and 40s, it was speculated that radios would never make it in the car because many people thought that it was just too great a distraction for the driver. Isn't that funny? Now we're having problems with texting and all sorts of other things, but an overwhelming majority of people felt as though radio wouldn't nor couldn't ever be a part of true consideration for automobiles because it was just too great a distraction.
Look how far we've come from AM to XM. You want to talk about a distraction radio channel? Listen to Howard Stern.
Yeah.
What did he say, Bill?
Hey, good point. Hadn't thought about that. And not only that, we're dealing with, now with video in the dashboard of a car where Mercedes has, a pretty cool split screen where the driver can't see it, but the passenger can, which I think is really interesting technology. But back to this 1955 Chevy wraparound windshield, look good. Base transmission was the 3-speed manual, the hydromatic 4-speed. At least to me, of course, being an automatic transmission guy for my whole life, the hydromatic 4-speed, probably the coolest option. MSRP back in these days, 1955, $1,600, so $1,699 or $1,700. A lot of money for 1955.
Oh yeah. Well, what do you know what the inflation would calculate that to today?
I don't know what it would roll out to, but inflation back then was running right at about 4%, so it's probably right on par. 1955, 1956, all the way through the mid to late 50s, extremely prosperous time for our nation. The return on investments were incredible. The country was going through a prosperous time. We had, the war had just ended. We were victorious. In WW2, the Korean conflict was happening, which is still interesting, still going on today somehow. But it was just a very good time for us. 1955, I don't think there's a 1955 vehicle that's not cool. I can't think of a 55 anything that I wouldn't like to have.
Yeah, no, I mean, if that's your genre and that's your thing, they're all hitting it right out of the park.
Absolutely understood. And before we go any further, let me mention that today's Clash of the Classics made possible by the largest automatic transmission network in the world. They are the Automatic Transmission Rebuilders Association, or simply the ATRA. Head on over to atra.com. There you're going to find a series of professionals that can get that transmission problem fixed quickly and usually inexpensive. Okay, I want to head over to the 1955 Ford F-150 pickup. And I've got, for me, there's true sentimental value here. I rode to school in a 56 Ford pickup truck all through my grade school years. My father had one, and that was an interesting time for me, to say the least. We won't go into many details there, but let's just say that I remember the truck very well. Second-generation Ford pickups, arguably the most iconic pickup trucks in the classics world. In fact, we even have one here on our studio wall, a 56 pickup truck. 1953 through 56 made up the second gen, and they are definitely the most popular classic trucks by far. There's a group of folks down 55 through 59 pickup truck owners here, F100 pickup truck owners. They had a big club down Southern California. There's got to be 1,000 members. Pretty cool vehicle. Popular Y blocks back then were the 272, the 292, and then the 312. 312 was more popular in the T-Bird, but you still could find it in some of the trucks. The 239 and the 256, a little less popular. Transmissions were the 3-speed manual. There also was an automatic back in those days, very rarely found, but it was the Ford-O-Matic 3-speed. And that was a good unit, cast iron unit that was very reliable, very dependable. It was well ahead of its time in terms of transmission design. Here again, for Ford, the transmission design, the gear train, was used from the early 50s all the way through 2009 again, and they used that in their AOD and the AODE transmissions. But talk about getting every drop out of your design dollar. That Ford had done a great job of that with their automatic trans.
And talk about a great year for distracted driving. You have Chuck Berry releasing Maybelline. You have Rock Around the Clock becoming the first rock and roll single to reach #1. You have Little Richard Tutti Frutti. And closing out the year in December, you have Johnny Cash, Folsom Prison Blues.
Ooh,
rocking on your AM radio.
See, now I didn't know Johnny went back. I thought Johnny was more of a 60s guy, so 55, huh?
Yeah. 50s. He emerged in the mid-50s and kind of continued through the 70s and made his comeback in the 2000s.
Yeah, we just had a big fire here in the Southern California area, and there was quite a bit of effort by the California Fire Division to safeguard Johnny Cash's property up in the Ojai area. That was a heck of an effort by those guys. Kudos to all the firefighters that made that happen. Original MSRP on this Ford, a little less than the Chevy, rolls in at about $1,681, so just a couple dollars less than the Chevy. But of these two cars, I'll start with this one. You got to go on the last one. I like the Ford. There's just no way to argue it. Talk about a timeless design. And as I'm here in studio, I'm looking at just behind your left shoulder. We have the one on the wall. Unbelievable. The bed style, the step side style, the cab, the rounded corners, the way the back glass was put together, the interior, the way the dash was laid out. It had that really symmetrical design just above the steering column. Really like the truck. I don't know why Ford never went back to that retro like Dodge did with the Challenger, and they did something, getting ready to do some things with the Barracuda. Chevy did it with the Camaro. Ford did it with the Mustang. There was never a retro with the 56, or actually 53 through 58, or 53 through 57 pickup truck. They never did anything with that, and I'm curious as to why, since it was, without question, arguably, anybody you ask, if you think of a classics model Ford pickup, you're going to look at that 56 Ford pickup.
Well, Ford probably saw what Chevy did with the SSR and realized, let's go ahead and steer clear of the retro thing on the truck, because it doesn't seem like that model fared too well for Chevy, especially coming in at the same price as a Corvette.
The SSR was a disaster. It was supposed to emulate the 49 through 54 Chevy pickup trucks. Didn't do a real good job of making the retro stick. It looked more like a bulbous kind of a Frankenstein.
It's kind of a Toontown vibe.
Yeah, yes, it was. It was a Toontown vibe for sure. Would it easy to make that a caricature easily? But maybe that's the reason why. I guess we'll never know. But Ford decided not to do it. But I like the Ford. Which one do you like?
Well, as I sit here in the 21st century, excluding the SSR, you can put me up against Chevy and Ford. I'll pick Chevy pretty much every time with, their Silverado and their Colorado and that sort of thing. You transport me, via Marty McFly DeLorean to 1955. Funny enough, that's the year he went to. I'm picking the Ford.
Yeah.
Ford, easy. It's way cooler.
It's got a real cool design. So, again, we have a little bit of a dilemma here in studio. You're right here. Go ahead and make a comment. Which car do you like? We'll talk about it next time we're on the radio. In fact, if you leave your name, we'll go ahead and mention you on the air. And I like the Ford. Chris likes the Ford. The Chevy's cool. No question, the Chevy's definitely cool. I definitely would like to have it, but between the two vehicles, definitely want to roll with the Ford. But before we close, I want to just mention, if you've got an automatic transmission problem, there's only one place to go for the solution, and it's an authorized ATRA member automatic transmission repair facility. ATRA's Golden Rule warranty, simply positively the best, most comprehensive warranty program on the planet, excluding none, and it's available only from the Automatic Transmission Rebuilders Association. You can find them anytime at atra.com. For Donnie, for Chris, for the entire Clash of the Classics crew, be safe, everyone. We'll see you next week for another Clash of the Classics battle.
I hear the train coming, it's rolling around the bend, and I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know